Hello everyone, this is Puka and welcome to another Pokemon TCG video. In the last video, we looked at the deck that Brandon Salazar used to win the US National Championship in the Masters Division, and today we'll look at the deck that took second, piloted by our very own Michael Pramelot, which is going to be a very simple Pyroar deck. Now, heading into US Nationals, there was a lot of hype around this one card, Pyroar. Has the ability Intimidating Mane, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's basic Pokemon. So this essentially shuts down a lot of those top decks that revolve only around those big Pokemon EX. Right? You know, there's the Yveltal decks, the Plasma decks, etc., etc. Most of them revolve around just big basic Pokemon, and Pyroar stops them right in their tracks. So the idea of this deck is going to be get Pyroar out, get more Pyroar out, get even more Pyroar out, and eventually those decks are just going to run out of Pokemon that can attack against Pyroar, and he'll be able to clean up the board. Now, most decks run just a small evolution line to try to deal with this guy, right? You see decks running Raichu, Garbodor, stuff like that, but it's normally only a 2-2 line, right? Think of all the decks that run just 2-2 Raichu, 2-2 Garbodor. So, all we have to do is kind of weather the storm, get past those, and then all of a sudden Pyroar is on his own against those basic Pokemon and clears the way. Now, his attack isn't particularly strong. Scorching Fang, 1 fire, 2 Callistas, 60 damage, and then you can discard a fire to do 90 instead of 60. That's not that great, but it's just enough to do the damage we need to do to knock out those counters we see to Pyroar. So, the main things we're going to worry about are those Raichu and are those Garbodor. Raichu we can just deal with right away. Scorching Fang can hit for 90. Garbodor a little trickier. It sits on the bench. Normally we see people try to run Startling Megaphone to discard the tool off of it. Nope, this deck's going to try to be more aggressive. We're going to play 4 Pokemon Catcher to try to bring out those Garbodor on the bench. And then with a Muscle Band, Pyroar can use Scorching Fang for 110 damage, knocking out Garbodor and leaving your opponent helpless. So not only do we have 4 Pokemon Catcher, we have 2 Lysander as well, just more effects to bring Pokemon off the bench and bring them active. So we can target down those Pokemon before they can evolve, or if they have evolved like Garbodor, we can take them out. So that is seriously the entire strategy of this deck. Be aggressive with Pyroar, catcher out the things that are going to cause you trouble, or Lysander them out, and that's it. Attack with Pyroar, over and over and over. And this was a very successful strategy. This deck actually did very well at the US National Championships. I think we saw 3 or 4 of them in the top 16. It was just extremely, extremely strong. Because, again, most decks just weren't prepared for it. Now, there are a couple other Pokemon as well. We have one Charizard EX, just a nice Pokemon to do a big burst of damage with Combustion Blast. 150 damage, and then you can't use Combustion Blast during your next turn. This is particularly useful against decks like Flygon, where they have pretty high HP Pokemon, 140. Charizard can go ahead and just say, you know what, I'm going to Combustion Blast and get knockouts like that. Alright, so it's just an explosive attacker. Also good against a card like Latias EX, which would otherwise wall Pyroar. With Charizard EX, we have the Muscle Band option to do 170 damage with Combustion Blast. So you never know when that big attack's going to come in handy. Our other Pokemon is just Mewtwo EX. Very simple. X-Ball does a lot of damage for a low amount of energy, and if you keep stacking energy on him, he does even more damage. Mewtwo's been around for, this is like the 3rd season we've seen Mewtwo, so this is a card that nobody should be surprised to see. Another simple, big, basic Pokemon that just runs as support. So you are seeing this correctly. There are only 6 basic Pokemon in this deck, 10 Pokemon total. Just go Pyroar, go. That's the name of the game. Alright, so our other cards, you can see here, normally my list of cards for decks extends all the way down here, and then even some down here, but no, it just cuts off right here. There's not even 3 full rows of cards in this deck. Lots of high counts of things. One of the trademark cards of this deck was Roller Skates. 4 of these, flip a coin if heads, draw 3 cards. That's it. We're using a lot of item-based draw cards so that we can use cards like Lysander and Blacksmith as our supporter for the turn. Of course, Blacksmith, we can take 2 fire energy from the discard, attach them to one of the fire Pokemon that we have in play. This is great to power up instant Pyroar, instant Charizard. That's just great. So with Roller Skates, we also have Bicycle, draw until you have 4. A lot of the time, this deck can live and die by the Roller Skates, so when you're flipping heads, things are going to go well. When you're flipping tails, things may not go so well. But hey, this is a very risky deck overall. Right, you know, if we face those decks that just revolve around basic Pokemon, we're going to have a good time. If we face something like an Empoleon deck, we're not going to have a very good time. So this is a deck that's completely dependent on matchups and what your opponent is playing. You're pretty much going to do the same thing over and over. It's just, does your opponent have the answers to Pyroar? And for Pram this past weekend, the answer most of the time to that question was no. They do not have enough ways to knock out Pyroar. Alright, so we do have Computer Search for the A-Spec card as well. Just allows you to discard 2 cards and search for any card. Another great card in combination with Blacksmith and Lysander. Being able to search for those, just a very explosive card. 2 Level Ball to search out those Litleo, 4 Ultra Ball to search out everything else. Our supporters are actually a little light since we have all those Roller Skates and Bicycle. For Professor Juniper, only 2 N. Hey, I guess that worked out for him. And then 2 Tropical Beach as well. This is very important to counter that Verbank City Gym, since a lot of decks, they really rely on that Hypnotoxic Laser in Verbank City Gym to get some damage on Pyroar when they run out of their evolutions to deal with it. And I guess we've kind of looked at everything here. Just 8 fire energy for double colorless. We've already seen the Muscle Band adds 20 damage to your attacks. And then 4 switch just to make sure we get out of that poison, which like I said can be problematic sometimes. But if you have enough ways out of the poison, not such a problem anymore. So here it is, a very, very simple deck. We saw a more complicated deck take first place with Brandon Salazar's Landorus, Mewtwo, Garbodor, Raichu, Druddigon deck. And here we have a 4-4 Pyroar line with 1 Mewtwo and 1 Charizard and a lot of Roller Skates. So there you have it. Here is Michael Pramawat's deck, and we'll see it in action. See how this bad boy works. Now, a word of warning, a lot of games with this deck will be very long and drawn out. Like I said, Pyroar's attack isn't particularly great. Very slow to knock things out sometimes. So a lot of the time it's going to be a very simple, just kind of grind it out kind of game. And it can be very annoying. So I'm going to go ahead and start off here with an Energy and a Muscle Band onto the Litleo. And then we'll go with a Level Ball. So not a bad start by any means. Go with the Roller Skates. And there is a Heads that's going to set up a very nice turn 2 for our board. Got 3 Litleo down right away. Have a Pyroar in hand. DCE, Catcher, Computer Search, all sorts of stuff to work with. And whatever comes down, if a basic Pokemon comes down like a Trubbish or a Pikachu or anything like that, we'll have the immediate answer with that Pyroar, DCE, Catcher, could even Computer Search for Lysander if need be. This is just a beautiful, beautiful start for this Pyroar deck. And this is going to happen a lot since the deck is extremely consistent. Not a whole lot of tricky stuff here, lots of Roller Skates and Bicycle. So hey, this is not totally unexpected. We do see a Float Stone on that Yveltal EX, and the Bianca, we don't see Bianca too often. Sableye going onto the bench. Sableye can be very pesky Pokemon, since it can recover those Hypnotoxic Laser. And here comes Sableye for the Junk Hunt, it seems like. So that's going to be annoying. Another Laser will come back. But hey, all we have to deal with are those lasers and any other sort of Pokemon that could evolve. We'll see if my opponent even runs any Pokemon that evolve. That'll be interesting to see. Alright, so we have the Pyroar, the DCE, and that's it. I'm not even going to bother playing anything else. Scorching Fang, 80 damage. Goodbye, Sableye. And now we are putting in the pressure on my opponent. There's another Hypnotoxic Laser. Those aren't particularly threatening without Verbank City Gym. There's another laser, so it's kind of a wasted laser there. Usually you want to save those as much as possible, so if I'm seeing my opponent putting down 2 at once, that is a big win for the Pyroar side. There we see the Dark Patch onto the Darkrai EX. Does my opponent have anything after this? Yes, a Professor Juniper. And I guess we'll find out shortly. Will my opponent play any evolution cards? If not, Pyroar is just going to have a field day mowing down these basic Pokemon slowly but surely. Now, I am asleep, so that's a bit annoying, but hey, I mean, what can you do? Sometimes you're asleep. We'll see if I stay asleep. If I do have that switch in hand. If not, I'll actually probably keep Pyroar up there as long as there's no Verbank City Gym in play. And there we see it, the Pikachu. Pikachu has come out. So it seems like my opponent's evolution of choice is going to be Raichu. We see this every once in a while because Raichu is good against other Yveltal decks. Normally, Garbodor is a more well-rounded card, I would say. Shuts off more things, more effective against a general field than Raichu is. But Raichu is very good against specific things. And, well, I guess Pyroar is one of them, but I'm not actually sure if Raichu or Garbodor is better against Pyroar. But Raichu helps more against Yveltal, so it's just, I don't know. You gotta decide which one's better. Now, unfortunately, Pyroar does stay asleep. Not a good turn of events. There's the Pokemon catcher. Gonna get a Tails on that one. Unfortunate. I would have preferred to get heads there. I'll be completely honest. Heads would have been pretty sweet. Could have gone after that Pikachu. Everything would have been hunky-dory, and we would have been in a great spot. But now, gotta decide what I want to do. I have a switch, I have a computer search, I have a blacksmith. I just don't really have enough cards to really pull an attack off here. I could just switch and Ultra Ball for Pyroar and then play the blacksmith and then end my turn. Heck, I could probably even just leave this Pyroar active. I don't need to burn a switch quite yet. So I'm going to go with a Pyroar off of this Ultra Ball, discarding the fire, since I'm going to play my blacksmith anyway. And yeah, seems to make some sense here. Let's blacksmith 2 fire onto the bench Pyroar. So now even if a Raichu does come out, we'll have another Pyroar ready to respond. And that's what it's all about. Your opponent can knock out a Pyroar, but if you have a backup just waiting for it to knock out their response to Pyroar, then, well, eventually you come out on top. And that is the entire point of this deck. Grind your opponent down until they're left with no way to deal with that intimidating main, because, let's face it, most of the hard hitters in this format are those big, basic Pokemon. So we see a mystery card come down from my opponent. Oh, it's a Keldeo EX. Sometimes your cards don't load on Pokemon TCG Online, and we just see that strange animation, but that's okay. I do have a computer search at this point in the game. If I wanted to play it, though, I would have to discard something useful, so I'm just going to say, you know what, we'll bench the Litleo. Seems a little more important in this situation. Go with the roller skates, and that's going to be a Tails, unfortunately. I do have a Mewtwo EX. We can actually afford to put down 1 Pokemon EX in this kind of a situation, but do I want to put it down? Sure, why not? Let's just bench the Mewtwo. And Scorching Fang, 80 damage, knocking out that Yveltal EX. Or not knocking out that Yveltal EX. I wish. That would be so much damage. Nope, just hitting for 80 damage, setting it up for a knockout in the future. And again, Pyroar still poison. Maybe I should have played that switch on that turn. But again, without that Verbank City Gym, I'm not particularly worried. It's going to take like 5 or 6 turns to be knocked out from poison. So I'm really not that concerned by any means. Alright, so another energy goes on to the Pikachu, and that means we may see a Raichu. But again, even if there is a Raichu, we have a Pyroar waiting in the wings, ready to Scorching Fang for the response knockout. Raichu can't knock out 2 things at once, so sure, it's effective, but you don't run enough of them to really overcome Pyroar, and you can see why this deck can be so devastating, even against a deck that is quote-unquote prepared for Pyroar with an evolution line. This deck just doesn't really care about that. It just says, you know what, you only run 2 things to attack me, and I have 4 things that you can't attack, and let's just do the math. 4 is greater than 2, and hey, that ends up with a Pyroar victory. Of course, there are some other factors here. Another Sableye is in play, which means we could see a junk hunt for more hypnotoxic lasers, which is quite annoying, but hey, we'll have to deal with it. We should be able to take all 6 prizes before lasers really get the best of our Pyroar. Sableye does come out for the junk hunt. Again, I mean, I have 1 prize taken. There's a Yveltal EX on the bench that's in range of being knocked out. We do draw a Pokemon catcher here. Gonna go for the Pikachu, but nope, that is a Tails. So far, kind of unfortunate on those Pokemon catcher flips, but hey, we'll have to deal with it. And Scorching Fang will take down another Sableye. Thanks to that Muscle Band, we don't have to discard any energy. And our army of Pyroar is building. Got that bicycle off of the prizes, which was pretty big. And so far, things are looking good. Something to also keep in mind, we don't actually need to use a Pyroar to knock out a Raichu. Mewtwo EX can certainly do that for just a DCE and a Muscle Band. We can just see an X-Ball responding to knock out a Raichu. And if that's the case, then that's a Pyroar that gets saved. And, you know, it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. If my opponent wants to win, he has to knock out 4 Pyroar and the Mewtwo. Or, you know, 4 Pyroar line. Litleo could be knocked out, I guess. But in the grand scheme of things, giving up that Mewtwo as 2 prizes doesn't end up mattering because it's still 4 Pyroar they have to get through. And that's really all the attackers we run. A Mewtwo, a Charizard, and then 4 Pyroar. That's it. So it ends up working out pretty well that we can just kind of throw in Mewtwo whenever we need to. So now we finally see a Raichu coming into play, but we still have not seen it attack. We've just seen a bunch of junk hunts. My opponent is taking too long. Cammy is saying, hurry up or I will give you a loss. That's a very harsh penalty, but if you take too long, they just kind of assume, okay, you're not actually at your computer anymore, you're not playing, so let's not waste anybody's time. Let's give you a game loss. We do see a Russian from Keldeo EX, which signals to me that my opponent really doesn't have much of anything this turn, and that seems to be the case here. And just another pass with Keldeo active. Now, I do have 30 HP left, and at this point, Verbank City Gym is going to be pretty problematic. So I'm going to try to hit a switch right here, and go figure. And finally, we hit a Pokemon catcher, bringing out the Raichu. So I'm going to get another Pyroar into play. We'll go ahead and switch into one of these other Pyroar on the bench. And look at this. Raichu's going to go down thanks to that catcher. Finally got a heads. We have 3 Pyroar ready to go. You know, one has 3 energy, the active has 2. I held that DCE just in case I didn't draw another energy to attack with the active one, but this is just beautiful positioning right now. We are in a great spot to take this game at this point. Down to 3 prizes, taking down 2 Sableye and a Raichu already. Now there is a Raichu on the way that can knock out this Pyroar, but again, we'll have a response ready for it. We'll have another Pyroar ready to go, and keep in mind my opponent will have only taken 1 prize after this knockout. All of this work just to take down 1 Pyroar, and you can see why Intimidating Mane is such an incredible ability. It just kind of changes the entire dynamic of the format when it's in play. But here comes the Raichu with that Circle Circuit attack, going to knock out my first Pyroar. But we have plenty of those waiting. Alright, here we have a Roller Skates and a Tails. Heads would have been nice to get some extra cards here, but let's just settle for the Scorching Fang, getting the knockout on that Raichu. And at this point, look, it's all basic Pokemon. That's it. 5 basics. They can't touch Pyroar. And that is just the reality of the situation. 2 Pikachu, 2 Raichu in the discard pile, 2 Sableye in the discard as well. This is just so much for these decks to overcome. And you gotta wonder, can my opponent actually do anything at this point? I really do not know. Now, there could be some problem cards we run into, like, well, Hypnotoxic Laser is a big one that we've been talking about the entire game. And speak of the devil, there is another one. Something like an Enhanced Hammer could be very annoying as well, to discard those DCE off of my Pokemon. But we do see an N from my opponent, and I did draw into one of those Blacksmith. So energy should not be a problem from here on out. And it just seems like a matter of time, inevitable, until we get to take down that Yveltal EX that already has the 80 damage on it. Just one more Scorching Fang will be a knockout on there, since we can opt to discard the energy and do the additional 30 damage. But here we go. Stay asleep on the Hypnotoxic Laser. That's a shame. We may have been able to get a win this turn if I have woken up. I can Bicycle and just try to draw for the, like a Lysander and a Catcher. But I'm just going to go with the Blacksmith. Looks like I should have, well, let's see, we can still try to roller skates here or something. My opponent says, where is my Verbank? And that's a good question. He has not seen one the entire game, but at this point it seems pretty much inevitable. Look at this. Pyroar active, 3 energy. Pyroar bench, 3 energy. Another Pyroar on the bench, 2 energy. Opponent still has 5 prizes left. We see another Hypnotoxic Laser and a Tails. So this seems like it's just all but over at this point, and with that Professor Juniper, it definitely is over. My opponent has decked himself up, but even if he didn't, we would have the computer search for that Lysander, and we would be able to bring out the benched Yveltal EX, finish it off with a Scorching Fang, and that would just be it. So you can see the power of Pyroar here. My opponent says all Verbank are prized. He can never win when that happens. And you got to think, even if he had those Verbank in play, would he have won anyway? Seemed like so much to overcome all of these Pyroar. Once those Raichu go down, there's really not a whole lot you can do. And we actually get a gift from the bonus wheel. So we'll have to see what kind of a gift we got from that as well. But my opponent conceded the game. Just said, you know what, I cannot win anymore. I decked myself out with that Juniper just to check if I had any Verbank in the deck, and I didn't even have any. And alright, what do we have for the prize? What the? A Smoochum from Heart Gold Soul Silver? They're really digging deep with these wheel prizes now. Wow, didn't expect to see a Smoochum that came out like 3 years ago. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will certainly have some more for you soon. I am Puka from the Top Cut, and I'll see you guys next time.